Roxy, I've seen on the internet that brat summer is officially over.
I never really knew what it was.
Still do not know what brat is. I'm ready for soup fall. Like, if we're activists, I think that's our cause.
I did literally set out all the ingredients this morning to make chili tonight, and I am so excited.
See?
It is not chilly outside yet, but I am making chili inside.
Okay, but later this week, it's going to dip down to the 50s at night. I feel like that's the official start of fall, like when it's like crisp.
That is like soup at a bread bowl moment.
Oh my gosh. Bread bowls. I'm not going to be able to think about anything else now. From Religion News Service, this is Saved by the City, a podcast from two Christian women saying goodbye to summer and welcoming fall, the best season in New York. I'm Katelyn Beaty.
And I'm Roxy Stone.
Well, speaking of summer, you had quite a momentous summer.
That's true.
I was holding down the fort here at Saved by the City. It was really fun to do the summer series.
I loved it.
Thank you.
It was so fun.
My priest said he listened to it this Sunday. I was like, oh, it's nice. So I was holding down the fort. It was great. But you were gallivanting on an island in Italy on your honeymoon. So what was that like?
Well, it was as good as it sounds. We were in Sardinia. So all my life, I've never been able to answer the questions like, are you a mountain girl or an ocean girl? Mountains or ocean? And you don't have to in Sardinia. The mountains meet the ocean.
Put your hands together.
Yeah, it's not like Maine. Sorry, producer Jonathan. The mountains meet the ocean in Maine, but the water is freezing. In Sardinia, the water is like turquoise blue and 80 degrees. So,
oh my gosh.
I know,
wow.
It's so good. It's truly the white whale.
What I'm envisioning is people jumping off cliffs into the warm water.
There was a lot of beach hopping. Like the adventure was finding the best beach, you know?
It's a really hard, arduous task.
Really was. And so we would always have to take like a break for spritz o'clock.
Which was when? 10, 11?
I won't answer, but it was, you know.
It's spritz o'clock somewhere. I see that at Hobby Lobby.
You know, I wanted to bring it back to New York, but New York is just not, it's just not the spritz vibe, especially not in the aforementioned fall.
Yeah.
So, but it was amazing. And I literally cried the last night. Like I was so sad to go. I was like, I'm not ready.
That sounds dreamy. Before you left on your honeymoon, we were having dinner with some friends, and your husband, John, it was a birthday dinner. So he was doing like he was asking me to reflect on the past year.
Yes, and that is a John move.
It was I mean this in a positive way. It was like pastoral.
Yeah.
He knows the moment to bring out those kinds of reflective questions. Now, later, he did sing a very erotic rendition of Savage Garden. So, like, this man has range. But he set up the game as high, low, and uh-oh.
Yes,
like, of the last year, what was your high? What was your low? What was your uh-oh? Which, the definition of which I'm still a little unclear on.
It's literally just when you would say uh-oh about something. You know, you ran into a celebrity and you said something dumb. Or you thought a guy was single, but he's actually like gay and married, you know?
A double whammy. Yeah. So I thought we could play high, low, uh-oh about our summers.
Okay.
I feel like maybe we've already gotten your high, but I could be wrong.
Getting married.
Yeah.
The wedding was a major high.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was a super magical day. It's amazing to have all of these people from all of these walks of life, all of these eras of my life, and all of these eras of John's life in one place, under one roof, for such a joyful occasion. Weather was great. I love where we got married. It was on the seminary campus where we lived, and where we met and fell in love and said, I love you, and got engaged and all the things. We also got married here. So
also, one of the best planned weddings I've ever been to. Like, everything just came together so well. Every detail was accounted for.
Oh, the flowers.
Well, I was going to say your veil. I keep thinking about your veil, which had like maybe hundreds of little floral appliques on it.
3D flower petals.
So beautiful.
I don't know if I would have gotten a veil if it hadn't been for you. I remember this one, we were like walking down the street one day talking about weddings, and you were like gushing about veils, and you were like, I just love a veil, and I think the veil is, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what you said, but you were very high on the veil, and I was like, yeah, she's right. Like, why would you give up one of the only opportunities you have to wear a veil? Like, they don't come around often.
And it feels like a piece of clothing for which, like, you can be dramatic with it. The longer, the more flowy, the more intricately made, the better. So,
Yes.
I think the high of my summer is just turning 40 and like the outing that we did to karaoke with a group of friends. And then after that, I drove home to Ohio and was with family at a cabin for a weekend. And it was like very low key, but my mom, made some of my favorite meals, and we played badminton and bocce ball and went on hikes, and my nephew was there. And the combination of karaoke in New York with friends followed by family time in Ohio was really great. And I feel good about turning 40.
Yeah.
The year leading up to turning 40 was what was causing so much angst. And then once it came, it was like, oh, this is great.
Well, you're well prepared.
Yeah. I mean, the summer series was a great, like, free therapy. Low of the summer?
I went home for the 1 year after my dad died. So I went home and I was with my mom and my sister, and it was just excruciating and painful and really hard in ways that I expected and didn't expect. I think it was so wrenching last summer to go home and to see my dad's stuff everywhere in where he clearly had last placed things. And then it was a different kind of heartbreaking to go home this year and not see his stuff anywhere. And just to know how hard that had been for my mom, like the work of moving his stuff and putting his stuff away and giving his stuff away and making all of these decisions. She's worked really hard over the past year. And I know she's had, and my sister have had, like, thousands of small heartbreaks as they gave away this item or, made decisions about something. And then I just saw it all at once. So it was a different kind of shock to my system. What about you?
I feel like anything I say now will be petty.
No.
I've had a lot of friend weddings over the last year, and I've really been grateful to be able to participate and, like, celebrate alongside friends. I think a hard thing to process has been maybe feeling like this is not about you. Feeling like marriage has changed my friendships with some women in my life in a way that feels like there's more distance or not as much communication or intentionality. The feeling like this person is, like, moving on. They've kind of ascended to a higher plane. This is, of course, nothing that they have said. I don't think it's intentional in a lot of ways, but I just think that it just takes some intentionality to, like, stay connected when you're in the middle of a big life transition. And as the single person, it can almost feel like you have something better now.
Yeah, I get that. I also feel like I went through that many times with friends who got married and told myself I would never be that way if and when I got married. And then you realize as you meet someone, or I realized as I met someone and fell in love and planned a wedding and all the things, like, you have to make room for them and for that new person in your life, and the intentionality of dating and the intentionality of, like, building a relationship there, and it has to come from somewhere. And that's a real tension I felt. I mean, thankfully, I didn't have much of a life, so it was easy to build around it.
Right. Your life was just like this void you were waiting for a man to fill.
Yeah, it was flat, black and white.
John brought the color, the Technicolor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been hard. But I also can reflect back on like long-term friends and realize like, oh, there are friends who will stay connected. It's not like, well, that's my final destination. And once I get there, I don't need you anymore. You know? So I'm grateful for that. What was your uh-oh?
I think that my biggest uh-oh is we thought we were going to have to move from the seminary campus where we live. And we thought we were going to have to move June 30th. And we were like, okay, probably don't plan a honeymoon in the 2 weeks right before you have to move. And so we like delayed the honeymoon. And then eventually we delayed our move date to 2 weeks after our honeymoon. So we still don't know where we're going to move in 2 weeks. As I'm recording this podcast, we've still not signed a lease on an apartment. So that feels like a little bit of an uh-oh.
By the time this episode comes out, I feel confident that it will no longer be an uh-oh. But at the time of this recording, I'm sure it's very stressful to be like, I literally don't know where we will be October 1st.
Yeah. It feels like an ongoing uh-oh. Man. What about you? What's your uh-oh?
So when I was getting ready to fly home to Ohio for this birthday weekend, my flight was delayed. Like, you know, it was delayed multiple times. They kept pushing it back. I think we were sitting there for 4 hours and then they canceled it because of hurricane something. And I just had to make a decision. You know, they rebooked me, but not until the next day. It was like 24 hours later. And because of the weather, it wasn't even a guarantee that I could get out a day later. And so I just ended up renting a car and driving like through the night from New York City to Ohio. It was like a 9-hour drive.
Yeah.
The uh-oh was the cost of renting a car in New York last minute.
Renting cars used to be so affordable and it is so expensive now.
Is it specific to New York or is it everywhere?
It's everywhere, I think.
So, yeah, that was a financial ouch-o.
Maybe a better definition of the uh-oh is like
an oh shoot.
I was gonna say the beginning of a rom-com. I feel like they're always like this sort of like funny series of events where you're like, oh, wow, this is terrible. And I got a flat tire and the guy who came to fix it is tall and hairy.
Yeah, like maybe the guy behind me at the counter would have been like,
I'll rent a car with you.
I'm going to Ohio too. Like, want to split a ride?
Exactly.
And then I'm murdered. But my mind is different. I've been watching too much true crime.
Well, yeah.
Not enough rom-com.
I feel like that would be a low.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Getting murdered side of the road. Definitely like, bottom 3 life experiences. Yeah. So we both had a break from Saved by the City this summer. The podcasting break is great. But there really was one moment in the news cycle where I was like, I need Roxy and I to talk about this right now.
Yeah.
Because it is going to bring on a bevy of opinions and thoughts. As it did for a lot of other people.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I felt the same way. So Let me guess. It was this clip.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
Ding, ding, ding. I'm annoyed listening to it again.
Can't even.
So most of our listeners know this comment is from vice presidential candidate JD Vance. He made this comment back in 2021 in an interview with Tucker Carlson, and then the Harris campaign, I should say smartly found it and shared it. This is not the only comment that Vance has made about childless people, like on different podcasts over the years. So yeah, not great.
Not great. But he also basically handed a lot of voters another meme to put on their hats and their mugs, a la nasty woman or Nevertheless, she persisted.
Exactly.
I mean, Taylor Swift literally signed her endorsement of Kamala Harris. Childless cat lady. It was a picture of her holding her cat.
Yeah, she does have a cute cat. So there's a lot going on here that we need to unpack. People have been talking about this basically for the past 2 months. What do you think is going on here? Like, why did this create such a firestorm?
I mean, because there's a lot of childless people out there, I suppose. It's the disdain. I mean, it just puts women in this punching bag position that I think we're just tired of being in. Like, we're supposed to hold like the backs of like the tradition and the traditional family. And, I think women just get the brunt of society's frustrations often when traditional ideas of family or parenthood or domesticity or gender get questioned or upended at all. And when you pair that with so much of what's happened recently, like the overturning of Roe v. Wade and having a woman running for president, the whole IVF debate, which we can get into in a little bit, and just all of the weird like vitriol that's thrown at single women. I mean, I think when you just put all of that together, it just felt so mean-spirited and this way of demeaning like half of the population,
If he had just said like, oh, childless people are running the country, people without kids are running the country, but the fact that it's cat ladies
right
is obviously misogynistic. It's like he's trying to conjure up this image of a woman who is weird or undesirable or like antisocial or who literally thinks that her cat is her child.
Exactly.
There's all this, people today think pets are their kids, which, okay, I don't disagree with entirely, but the cat lady stereotype,
Yeah.
right? It's an old trope.
It goes back to like witches. Those witches on their broomsticks with their cat.
Yeah. So Vance is very much trying to paint the left or the Democratic Party as being anti-family. Like those people over there hate kids. They hate families. Our party is the party of families. We're incentivizing couples to have more children. We're going to put these policies in place. If you care about family, you'll be on our side. And it just kind of stinks to feel like something that feels like it could be a very common human experience across the political divide is being made into a wedge issue. And that's to say nothing of the fact that lots of childless cat ladies would love to have children.
Yeah.
And I know Vance clarified in other comments that he wasn't talking about couples that want children and can't. But like, you were on Tucker Carlson and you said childless cat ladies. So
yes,
you said the thing, you went low. It's hard for us to hear your nuance later on, right? This is like such a tender thing. Why is this the thing to go after people on? My dad said it was stupid, by the way.
Thank you. Your dad is right. That was stupid and low and mean. And he doubled down on it. He's tried to sort of explain what he means, but he's talked about how childless people don't have the same stake in the country because they are not as invested in the future of the country. And I think that's this idea that the childless people are selfish.
Right.
That it's really just about them and what they want and what we want as childless people. And, we're not sacrificing for the good of the future and the good of the country. We want what we want now.
Because like married people with kids would never be self-centered. Or like people without kids would never be selfless or self-sacrificing. It's just a totally false binary.
Well, and as if the only way to be invested in the future is for your own legacy via blood, is out in the future. And that's the only way and only reason you would ever care about our country's future or our planet's future. I mean, there are literally people who are choosing not to have kids out of a sense that it's bad for the environment. Like there's some people who are making choices to not have kids out of a self-sacrificial stance.
Yeah, or a sense that I don't know what kind of world am I bringing them into. I know that Vance, it's unclear to me how much his conversion to Catholicism as an adult 5 years
Right.
ago is shaping his policy proposals. I mean, I think it's probably safe to say that whatever those were at a previous time in his political career have been overshadowed by his alignment with Trumpy politics. But if you are a Catholic, like part of your tradition is recognizing church leaders who do not have biological children, who consider the people in their care to be their children.
The nuns, the priests.
Yeah, that you find in the Catholic tradition, but also like just historically in the church. I would think that Vance might have a category for like a kind of person who doesn't have biological kids, who is very deeply invested in society, in the common good, in people besides themselves.
You would think. I mean, that is one of the deeper ironies of this whole thing. Like the level of esteem that's given to clergy and faithful who have chosen a life of celibacy and a commitment to the church as a sacrifice, like literally as a sacrifice, not out of selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite a thing that he has completely categorized childless people in this way. And he's gone back and he's been like, of course, the nuns. We love the nuns.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't remember where somebody asked him about it after that.
Mm.
And he like made some kind of accommodation for the nuns. Certainly not for the NONESs, though, which
No.
I think is like part of kind of where some of his disdain is directed.
Yes.
It continues to go back to like feminism and the sexual revolution. And it's all kind of tied up, right? That women could choose to be independent, to be on their own, to have their own careers, that family might look different, that men might have to participate in the same way in the household as women. And I just don't know why this is still hanging around and why it's like getting brought to the forefront again in this particular GOP and in this particular like political moment, why we're re-escalating this gender battle around roles and the purpose of family and of women within the household and bearing children, and just like, why is this all coming up again?
According to polling data, there does seem to be this political divide between people with children and people without.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022, about 38% of Democrats had never had children, compared with just 26% of Republicans. And this also tracks with the growing number of millennial and Gen Z women who have really, in some ways, now they form the base of the Democratic Party. So in some ways, Vance is responding to that growing divide between people with and without children and between younger men and women, because millennial and Gen Z men have not drifted leftward in the same way. And as we know, there's this counter, like very online right-wing manosphere movement that's drawing a lot of them even farther away, which is affecting dating and marriage and family formation.
So much to unpack there. We should do another episode on that. Yeah, I mean, that's really dramatic, the divide that is happening between men and women politically, especially among younger generations. It's particularly dramatic between single men and single women. Single women are just far and away more likely to be Democrats and to lean liberal. And single men, even more than married men, will lean conservative.
So the single set is the most politically polarized.
They're the most politically polarized, mostly among women. Like women have a tendency when they're married to lean a little further right, but they're still more left than married men.
Also, okay, in my research for this, did you know that certain pets are coded liberal or conservative, and cats are actually coded the most liberal?
That is not surprising.
Can you guess what kind of pet is the most conservative coded?
I would have to say it's either a Labrador or a golden retriever?
So they didn't break it down by dog breed, but dogs do code a little bit more conservative.
Mm-hmm.
The most conservative is a horse or pony. You seem upset.
Ponies too?
Are you thinking like ponies are gay?
It's interesting because I think I love horses. I grew up with horses. So I think there's two interesting things going on there, which is that either horses are like super representative of like rural, farm, ranch, country, but they're also very representative, very wealthy, very traditional, like old wealth, old money.
Yes. Country club, blue blood.
Right.
The most centrist, like the animal that people have across the political aisle in equal terms is a rabbit.
That's not true.
I thought that was cute.
I don't know. That can't be true.
I'm looking at the data right now. I'm looking at the data. So, I mean, many other people have made this point that Vance's comments really came out in the headlines around the same time that several GOP leaders are raising these ethical concerns about IVF, in vitro fertilization. Mm-hmm. Some want to try to restrict people's ability to pursue IVF. I should say, again, this feels like a really unwise political strategy because it is so deeply personal.
And so common.
It's very common. I mean, plenty of conservative leaders or people who, are aligned with the GOP have come out and said, why are you going after us? Like, this is a common pursuit of fertility that cuts across the political divide. And most people who are pursuing it are doing so because they desperately want the very thing that Vance is saying we should all want.
Right.
So it's like, wait, you want us all to be fertile and having multiple children, but you only want us to be doing it in the way that you deem is okay.
And this is tricky because, the Pope too has...
Oh, yeah, the Pope.
Come out with concerns about IVF and, playing God. And what about the embryos that are left behind and are unused? And these are, by the Pope's beliefs and many Catholics' beliefs, like these are humans. These are people.
Right.
So, I understand like the tricky line to walk there if you are Catholic or you believe these things. But politically, it makes no sense. Mm-hmm. And as two childless women who have had conversations on this podcast about IVF with women who have chosen to have babies via IVF and have considered it ourselves, like, again, this whole thing really hit close to home.
Yeah, I don't want to be a relativist. I mean, I think the ethical and spiritual questions raised by assisted reproductive technologies are important. If you're a person of faith, the best place to wrestle with these questions is with a community of other seekers who you trust and who know you and who can walk through this sensitively. Mm-hmm. It hits different when it's some guy on Tucker Carlson making mean comments about women. Like, why does JD Vance care about my fertility journey? Like, why does JD Vance care about the fact that I am childless? And I haven't had a cat for years.
Speaking of being childless within a church community, how do we think the church is doing when it comes to childless church ladies?
Or childless church cat ladies like Julian of Norwich, who is a badass. We'll get to that question soon after we give a shout out to the organization that makes this all possible.
Religion News Service is an independent, award-winning source of global reporting on religion, spirituality, culture, and ethics.
From pastors to prophetesses to imams to rabbis to internet gurus, RNS covers the people who are leading faith communities in the modern world.
And be sure to check out the other podcast offerings from RNS. We've got Martini Judaism with Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin and The State of Belief with Reverend Paul Brandeis Rauschenbusch.
Also, send us your other ideas for this season. Shoot us an email at sbtcpodcast@religionnews.com, and be sure to drop us a rating or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We love hearing from you. A recent poll came out this summer that you're seeing for the first time this generational moment where more young women are leaving the church than young men. So among Gen Z, you're seeing men staying and women leaving. And this is maybe Mark Driscoll has done the work that he's promised to do all this time, and he's finally getting men to stay and women are leaving. But it's striking. Women have for so long been the ones who have stayed in church while men have left.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, if you look at the rates of people disaffiliating from the church, it's always more men than women have left the church. And we've talked about that many times. Like women make up the backbone of many congregations. And so it's, if you care about the church as an institution or Christian communities, it's alarming to see this demographic that's been traditionally like more committed to the church now leaving. But I imagine some of it is connected with the fact that young people are staying single longer. They're either foregoing or delaying starting families. There's all sorts of economic anxiety about what it actually takes to bring a child into the world and raise a child. And then you have this ideological battle around women's roles in society. And yeah, if I'm a young woman who's receiving the message that to be a good Christian woman means I have to follow this one path of marriage and family, and neither of those things even seem like remote prospects or maybe not be something that I want. The question is, does this place have room for me? Does it have room for women like me?
Not to mention if you want to be in leadership and you're being told you can't, and there's all these men around you in churches who believe that you certainly can't be a pastor, but maybe also ideas around women leading in society. And these voices of these more traditional, more patriarchal traditions have become weirdly loud lately.
Well, they've always been loud.
You're right. They've always been red-faced and loud.
They've become louder.
They have. Then I guess they just are getting bigger platforms. You know, you've got this rise. We've talked about it. A lot of our audience has seen it. This rise of like these trad trends on Instagram in certain church circles. And I think that is drawing some of these more conservative men and women, I guess. But
so if you're a young woman and let's say you were raised in the church and you're also starting out as an adult and you're surveying the landscape of men in the church, or you're getting particular messages from leaders in the church that want you to fit a very uber feminine, uber traditional, idealized vision of womanhood. I mean, I have to acknowledge there are women who find that appealing.
Sure.
But I think of this generation we've been talking about that are leaving the church, I imagine a lot of them don't. This is not the kind of life they signed up for. And it makes me sad that a place that should be among the first places to celebrate women, regardless of their status as mothers or not, of all places, is becoming another place that just lays another should on women's shoulders.
In our time left,
we're going to solve this.
Yeah. I mean, what is the number one thing that you think churches should do to be more welcoming of the childless women among them?
Elevate childless women to positions of leadership. It doesn't have to be lead pastor. You know, there are lots of ways to serve and teach and model or disciple. But I think, younger women need some kind of model of like what it could look like to hold your faith and your feminism together, not making having a biological family a requisite for leading in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually, it can be quite rare. I mean,
absolutely.
I can't even tell you a church leader that I've encountered who wasn't married with kids in my own life experience. Or I can count on one hand.
Yeah, I can too. And they're often not paid well in comparison.
I mean, because they don't have a family to support.
Right, exactly. The other thing I would say is like really taking seriously and advocating for this biblical idea of the church family,
Mm-hmm.
brothers and sisters in Christ. Like we are meant to be closer to each other than just strangers sitting in a pew or acquaintances in the choir or whatever. Like we are meant to be close enough that your children are part of my family, even if I don't have children.
Mm-hmm.
And to be invited into a place where you are part of that family. And, then I would feel like I had a stake in this country's future, is what I'm saying.
If I could just talk to one child, then I would care. Yeah, I mean, it is the vision of church that we're given from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is so hard to hold on to when the biological family remains so centralized in our story of happiness, of like what it looks like to lead a full and meaningful life, to lead a selfless life is oriented around, marriage and kids. And it's not, I want there to be married people with kids in the church, but I don't want those who are not married or without kids to feel any less than. And I think that's still a worthy goal to shoot for. That would be a high. But we're in a real uh-oh moment.
Truly. Saved by the City is a religion news service production. Senior producer is Jay Woodward, and the consulting editor is Paul O'Donnell. Our editor is Julia Wyndham.
Chaz Rousseau put together our look, and Martin Fowler wrote our theme music.
We are Roxy Stone
and Caitlin Beaty. Thanks for listening.